We're live.
We're live! Hello, hello!
Hello.
It's Thursday, and that means it's
Couple time.
couple time. And today we have a beautiful talk about what the fuck is a tantric temple.
And what happens in the tantric
And what
temple.
happens in a tantric temple. And so I'm so curious for everybody joining and coming in. Do you know what a tantric temple is? Have you been there? Do you have a picture in your mind? What do you think happens in a tantric temple? Share it with us. We're so curious.
Or what is in your mind?
What's in your mind?
What do you think?
What do you think right now?
And I want to make a joke. So it's really getting fast today, because what happens in a tantric temple stays in a tantric temple. So, but this is not a bad joke. Actually, I'm good at bad jokes.
But it's actually the truth.
It's the truth, and so this is the most important thing. Also, that means it is a safe place. Yeah. Well, what means safe here?
You want to describe first what a temple is?
It's a safe place.
Not only that, it's a sacred place also.
It's a sacred and safe place where
a
lot of things can happen. Huh?
Exactly. You know, we shared about tantric temples before. And I think one question that reached us a lot of times is that if you have never been to a tantric temple, you know, people cannot imagine what that is, really. And I tried to describe it. But the question that came over and over and over again was, what happens? Like, what does it look inside? What does it really mean? And that's a really hard question, because so many things happen in a tantric temple that there's not one definition for that. Mm-hmm. But I think we want to try to tell you what.
Maybe not to define, but to tell from our experience.
Yeah. Okay, tantric temple. I think I do want to define what I think it is. Yeah. So for me, a tantric temple is a sacred space where you experience sacred sexuality, where it's a space where you experience yourself also. It's a place of intimacy. It's a place of deep connection. It's a place where you can meditate, but it really is a sacred space where all of life is allowed to be. And that also means sexuality. And it is a place, like in the old ancient times, there were temples to celebrate sexuality. Remember? And, you know, the man would go to the temple to experience sexuality through and divinity through having sex with a woman. And a little bit, that's what a tantric temple still is today. But what happens in a tantric temple? What is it that you would say happens in a tantric temple?
Wow, yeah, for me it's some kind of safe playground to experience myself in interaction with others and by being mirrored by others as well.
So
you see, it's not about bodies, or it's not about body-wise interaction. It's more about some kind of spiritual or consciousness growing path.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a temple is not the spiritual version of a swinger club. It's not. But in a way, it is exactly that. So a tantric temple really is a place where you experience sexuality in a completely new way. And it's a lot of playfulness, and it's a place where you can experiment. It's a place where you meet your shadows. It's a place where you really meet your fears and your pain. But it's also a place where you can meet the purest light that you are.
And the purest form of life also. Yeah. Like without all of this mask and layers and distortion we have in our daily life. This is also a place where really raw and pure life energy is.
Yeah. So maybe we can take them on a journey. How does a tantric temple look like? They're all different, but how does it look like? So you get there, and usually you start with like maybe a little process or a workshop where you connect with the people that are in the place, where you connect to yourself and also to the people. And that is something so important, you know, you connect through the eyes, you connect through meeting one another. You really build up a beautiful, safe container. And that itself is so beautiful already. And then, and maybe interrupt me if you want to add something, then at one point, the temple starts. And the temple, usually there's a build up, you know, you build up the temple. And in a temple, there's usually different stages, or like stages, do you say that? Different locations. Where you can experience different things, you know. So there is actually, like, there is how do you say that in English, a red thread through the temple. You can follow it, but you can also just go with your own flow. And so the different corners, I'm going to call them like that, where you have usually mats and pillows and it's all beautiful. You know, maybe we can name a few. So there's the temple built up. And then afterwards, well, you know, one thing we experience in the temple is that you sit together and you speak about your fears and your boundaries and your desires. And that's something really beautiful also, you know, too.
It's funny that you have the desires at last.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So you speak about your desires.
Maybe desires.
Your fears also and your boundaries. And it's something, you know, that once you know the desires, the fears and the boundaries from other people, you can play. But in a safe place, in a safe container also, you know. So, and then the temple opens, you know. And then you can just go with the flow and yeah, well, maybe just talk a little bit about the build-up also, how that you can picture it if you've never been in there. So how do the different corners, what can we meet there?
I think it really depends what you want to experience and who's organizing the temple, but I guess it's a mirror of society, the mirror of mankind itself and all the different aspects you have. And it can be soft, it can be hard, it can be lightful, it can be painful, it can be with touch, it can be without touch, it can be divine, or it can be also dark.
Yeah, and I want to name a few because there's people that don't have any idea what it means. So usually there's a corner for BDSM, for tantric kind of kinky BDSM, you know. And that's also like a place where a lot of people are curious to just find out, you know, the beauty about it. And sometimes there's a place where it's just for massaging, you know. So if you have the desire to be massaged, you would go there, or maybe, you know, you just sit there and maybe someone would come, or also you can go to someone directly and be like, I have this desire. Can we find a meeting point, you know? And then you speak about it. Or maybe there's a place where it's about yoni worshipping and lingam worshipping, because that is so beautiful to just have someone look at your yoni and your lingam and you know, like they admire you and see the beauty and the divinity in it. Sometimes there's a space of just cuddling or touch, or just a place where you sit, you meditate and connect when you're lost, to reconnect with yourself. So there's so many possibilities, and it's just so creative, you know, because usually sometimes all people together, sometimes a handful of people create the temple and the temple places. Corners. I'm going to call them corners. And then you go with the flow. And I think that, for me, is the hardest part in the temple.
Well, I think, what are the corners for? The corners are like impulses to get in contact and to get in touch with each other and speak about, to have like-minded people and speak about your similar desires. Yeah,
and they give you a structure also, you know, but you can hold on to in the beginning, so to get the energy moving, you know, and to really to get into it.
But my point is that theoretically you can just talk about your desire and find if there is a match.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. And what I find that the hardest part is not like, once you are connected with someone and you have spoken about your desires and your boundaries and your fears, then it usually flows. But getting there, that for me is the hardest part, because that for me is like facing my fear of rejection, because you actually have to own your desire and you have to go to someone and speak it out and say, hey, this is my desire and I want you for that, you know. And there's a lot of fear of projection and a lot of fear of, oh my gosh, maybe they don't want me. So you do meet your fears. You do meet that one fear that most of us have, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good enough. But it's such a beautiful place to practice, you know, to step out of your comfort zone. And then once you overcome your fear, it's actually beautiful, blissful, you know. And what have you want to talk a little bit? What else?
I want to add one aspect also, which is the most important thing, because it could seem overwhelming, or if you're not clear with your boundaries, it can be like crossing your boundaries. And I think the most of the common sense in the temple is like you're fully self-responsible for your desires, but also for your boundaries and going for it. So it's and you're of course also there to take care of the boundaries of others if they speak it out, so you don't cross others' boundaries.
It's a lot about consent.
Yeah,
you know?
it is. Consent is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, it's a lot about consent and asking before you touch,
or
you know,
whatever.
and speaking and communicating or whatever, you know. And what I love about a temple is that usually like it's really deep, you know, and it's not only about sex or whatever, but it's so much more. It's like a really deep experience and a really deep connection.
And to get that depth and to reduce the risk of falling into old patterns and sexual things, there is most times one general boundary.
And that is penetration.
That is penetration, yeah.
And I mean, each temple is different, but a lot of times that is one boundary that is for the whole temple, that there's no penetration. So you see, and that's so beautiful, that you can have a magical night, you know, full of juiciness and pleasure and sexual and orgasmic energy and joy or whatever, and there's no penetration. And it really teaches you that sexuality is not the act of it, but sexuality is life force energy that we get to meet in the temple from so many different corners, you know, and in such a variety. And that is the beauty of a temple for me. And I'd love to talk about our experiences a little bit.
Okay.
You know, what were the things that we got to experience that were new for us? So obviously Christian and I could go in a temple and just experience us. And we did. And we did experience beautiful things because the energy alone in the temple is fucking juicy and so bold that it helps us to connect and to reconnect to that magical high vibrating energy. That itself is so magical. So we just went to a 24-hour temple last weekend, and it was 24 hours, and that helped us so much because it was such high energy. Yeah, the energy, and in the field, in the room, there's so much energy that it's very easy to have it in your system also, to raise your own energy also. Yeah, no, and then also, I mean, for us, it's always interesting because we enter as a couple. And there's a lot of, it's always different. There's people that are single, there's people that have a partner, but they're there by themselves. And they play in between their boundaries they have with the partner. And then there's couples, and usually we are the minority. Usually there's not as many couples. And for us, that has been the hardest process, I think, to find us in there. Because I think we started going to temples. And for me, we were really open, and I found out that it was too open maybe. But I didn't really know, you know, what I needed. It's also like finding out in that field that you've never been in, you know. So I did, like the first temple I went in there blind. I didn't know what to expect, and I completely crossed my boundaries, and I was helpless. I couldn't speak up for myself, and that triggered so much pain, and that pain, it traumatized something in me. I mean, you remember that? It really took me, I needed help to get out of there. And that's fine, you know, I'm so thankful that happened because I was able to heal a lot. But I did cross my boundaries back then. But today, I think the challenge is to know what we want as a couple also, and to be clear about that, you know. And then also, obviously, there's the risk of triggering, you know, like of me getting triggered or Christian getting triggered, you know. And I think that is the whole art in it, you know.
And to find a common meeting point.
Yeah.
And if you're playing with others, then you have not only 2 people finding a meeting point, but also 3, 4, 5, whatever people. And that's could be even harder.
Yeah, it is. Huh? And you know, we entered temples before where we said, okay, it's fine if you play with different people. A Christian plays by himself, I play by myself. And now, right now, we found that if we go to temples, we are like everything we experience together. And this is where we are at right now. And it's beautiful, you know. And obviously there's the belief that we, like in me saying, but it's harder to find a person that wants to play with both of us or wants to meet with both of us. But I think it's just a belief also, you know. So what we experienced in the last temple is we had a beautiful, beautiful encounter with an amazing woman. And we were in a kind of, I don't know how long, you know, we were in this blissful energy and melting together and really experiencing, I don't know, a lot of juiciness, a lot of pleasure, you know, orgasmic energy. And it was beautiful for her also, because for her it was really special to enter the energy of a couple, you know, also. So this is something we experienced in the last temple. Well, I experienced an encounter with a woman before in the last temple where it was just me and this beautiful woman also, you know. Or in one temple it was all of a sudden there were 6 couples, you know. A couple came to us and they said, hey, okay, you guys, do you want to see if you find a meeting point here? And then another couple came and said, can we join? Yeah. So and we all sat together, and talked about our desires and boundaries, and then we went for it.
So it was 6 people, not 6 couples, but
6 people.
Yeah. So let's be a little bit more specific, maybe.
Yeah.
What means? What could it mean?
Be like a
finding a meeting point, whatever. So it's like
finding a meeting point. I mean, finding a meeting point is about, I'm going to start sharing my desires, you share yours, and the third person, for example, shares its, like their desire. And then it's about finding a place where we all meet. So how could it look like? For example, saying, okay, boundary is penetration, so penetration is out. For some people, like French kissing, deep kissing is a boundary, so that one is out, you know? How could it look like? I don't know. Like, with 3 people, and that's just something we experienced. It could be that both women are there to serve the man, you know, enjoy that. It could be that what I enjoyed a lot actually was that I was in the middle and I was pleasured by this beautiful woman and you at the same time. And that was a dream come true, you know, because for a woman, for me, I'm so sensitive with my breasts. Having someone kiss my breast at the same time when somebody's like touching my yoni, that was like nothing else, you know. It was so beautiful. So for me, that is so beautiful because it used to be such a big thing, and now it's not anymore. It's actually just the most natural thing if we just finally don't make such a big thing out of sexuality anymore.
So it's something like a place where you can fulfill your dreams actually, and to try out even things. So some people come there and want to fulfill their dreams. Some people come there and want to face their fears and their deepest fears and shadows. So it really depends what you're up to and what do you want to experience. But this is the place where everything is possible besides the boundaries. There was a question about...
Did you try Tantra massage? Yes. And that's usually not something that's in the temple, not particularly. It's part of it, but I've tried it. But that's just, for me, that's just a really, really small part of all of this. But yes, I've tried it.
Yeah, we do it
between each other. Huh?
Yeah, between us, but not in the temple actually.
Yeah, it's true. And I think I want to add that talking about all of this, and maybe for some of you it's really new, a tantric temple really, really is different from any kind of club that you might have in your head. For me, a tantric temple, the energy is so loving and the people are so deep. They're deep and they are so, a lot of them are so healed and they're so connected to themselves. So the energy is completely different. For me, what I found, and that's just my understanding or what I believe in. A lot of people going to these clubs, a lot of times they're not connected to themselves, and they want things so they can finally feel themselves. In a tantric temple, the people feel themselves most of the time. They're connected to themselves, and they do that out of a place of abundance and out of a deeper connection to themselves, and that's where they come from. So their energy is completely different. It really is something sacred. It's sacred. And sexuality there is sacred for me, and that's also in the field, you know.
Yeah, maybe you can, it's generally spoken, and maybe it's not true, but it's more like in a club or something, you're going to have to get something from someone, and in the tantric field, it's like more to experience yourself in front of the other.
And through the other also, you know.
And
That's mainly, that's beautiful. Yeah. So yeah. And I think I want to add, I mean, you know, it could also mean we had a sauna. Fuck, it was amazing to be in the sauna. And then at one point we would enter, and then one of the beautiful women said, come on in. This is, how did you say? Masturbation sauna.
Masturbation sauna.
And they were just having fun with the yoni, you know, self-pleasuring themselves. And it's so freeing and liberating because it becomes so normal there in the temple. And that is so freeing. That it's normal to touch yourself. You know, it's no big thing. But that's the biggest condition we have in us. So the sauna is a good meeting place.
But yeah, it's also about de-tabooing all this kind of stuff, like nakedness, sexuality, touching others, touching yourself, moaning, screaming, whatever. It's a place of where everything can be, and where it's in an holy and positive vibration environment.
And I think, you know, when you just said that, what is so beautiful also that I'm doing this because that is the closest comparison that we have, and most people know about swinger clubs but not about tantric temples. In a swinger club, you come there usually and you go in separate rooms, and it's like, except there's a lot of, maybe you meet one person or two, but in a tantric field, you meet all of them, and during the whole time, even if you have an encounter with one or two people, the whole field is connected. So, and that is a huge difference. There is a connection all the time. We serve a higher purpose, and that is to rise the energy also, you know, and that is different, because at the end, you know, towards the end, we were all laying on the couch, cuddling, being connected with others, maybe watching the pleasure of others, and it's different because there's a deep connection with all of the people there. And
of course, comparing to that, there are no drugs, no alcohol, nothing.
Usually vegan food.
Yeah, so everything that brings you to feel yourself and not to distract you in your heart.
So I hope we were able to explain it a bit more. You have to just come to one. And there was one question somebody asked us, and the question is beautiful actually, and the question was, do you usually communicate before you enter the temple what your desires and what your boundaries are, or do you do that in the temple? And that's a specific question each and every couple has. Like, that is a really important question,
but it's also an important question, not only for couples, but for yourself. Also, if you're going there, have a clear view on your boundaries. And that doesn't mean that you don't
can't change.
But be clear about that before you enter, because if you're in such a high vibrating field, it's easier to expand,
and then you might do something that afterwards doesn't feel okay anymore. So I think it's like also there, usually what we said is, if you have a boundary in the beginning, you know, that's where we stick with. Even so in the temple, you know, the energy is so high and you might be like, oh, I can do it. Usually, no, this is actually the rule. If we have a boundary before, this is what we stick with.
So
you can negotiate later, but not in the temple.
Yeah, so we specify separate between soft and hard boundaries, which means hard boundaries are not
negotiable.
Negotiable in the temple, and soft boundaries are to talk about them.
Yeah, we can talk about them, and so that is something really important in communication. If you are as a couple, and also you know, you can always in the temple, if you said yes to something, you can always at each time say, okay, no, it's not okay anymore. So it is about communicating before, but also in the temple. And what we do is usually to find moments where we speak with each other, where we communicate with each other. And yes, let me tell you, it's not always easy. It's not always easy.
And here, this thing I call self-responsibility or radical self-responsibility comes into account, because it does also or exactly mean be responsible for your emotions and don't project or blame others for feeling your own emotions. And that is sometimes really hard because it's so easy and so we are so used to project our emotions on others.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I never thought I would ever talk about what is a tantric temple. So to all of you who asked us, I hope this clarifies a little bit. It's a beautiful place. It really is. It helped me grow a lot. It helped me discover parts of me I didn't even know I had them. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a sacred space.
And it's a wonderful place to get a deeper understanding of ourselves, to be playful and experience or discover parts of us which we never thought we had, like you said. And
to really experience sexuality for what it really is, if you take out penetration, then what is it for a lot of people? And to experience that sexuality is so much more. So much more. That you have a whole playground there, of possibilities without penetration. Beautiful. For everybody that watched today and that's watching this later, thank you so much for being here. If you have any more questions, please comment below. Let us know.
Send us a message.
And send us also, if you ever want us to speak about something particular, let us know. We're so open to do that. And for now, sending you lots of love and kisses. Little spoiler, the next couple talk, I would love to talk about our experiences in the threesome. And how our process to get there. And because I think that's also something that for a lot of people, they can't imagine it. Because from the outside look at it and be like, okay, how does it look inside also again, So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, let's talk about that. All right, beauties. Kisses to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.